Okay, let's do it.
Okay, looks like we are live and we are live.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm Tiger Lily. Welcome to United Vibration and Wake the Unicorns.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Martinez and I am really excited to be here talking tonight and I look forward to the conversation.
Let's do this. We're going to get into it.
Yes.
Go ahead, prep us.
Yes.
Tell us what we're into.
So, today we're going to talk a little bit about what United Vibration stands for and what our message is. We are trying to create a movement for everybody and for the human race and for peace and for all the things. So we would like to see if you would like to participate in this positive movement. And we're going to go into depth a little bit about what it is that we exactly believe and the things that we speculate and some theories that we are getting into. Hi everybody. It looks like we're getting some hellos here. What's up? Thanks for joining. Oh, you turned it around.
Don't worry, we're live.
Hi, Yasmin. Hey, awesome. So good to see everybody. Cool. So, a little bit about the protest tonight. Tell us.
So we originally were going to go to the protest tonight in Salt Lake City, but we decided not to. There were a few factors for me, at least. One was that we were hearing some speculation. We're going to get into this later. We were hearing some speculation that there was going to be some violent stuff happening up there. We had two different instances. One from the Box Elder County Sheriff's Department posted something about that they had received or that they knew of some rumors that were going around that they specified that they hadn't substantiated these rumors, but that they felt like it was in the best interest of public security to post these rumors that there would be. Do you remember what exactly it said? I don't want to misquote it.
Pipe bombs, isn't it?
Let me look it up. But the other one was from. Do you want to tell them about the other one?
Well, I received one from my mom, and she was posting an article about some shooters going down to the protests. So, getting close to the curfew time, we thought, maybe not tonight, but we are hoping to get on a couple more peaceful demonstrations this week. So, stay tuned for that. We would love for anybody to join that would like to. Again, these are completely peaceful protests. We do not encourage any type of arguments. So lots of people, that's how it starts, is just by having a conversation and it starts to get heated. So it's just about saying, this is about love and I'm here to say that we need peace and that is it. That is my message, period. So just want to keep that in mind as we're going through these.
Yeah, so I echo that as well as a few other sentiments that I think will kind of become pretty clear, which is that there's a lot that's happening that is very confusing, and there's so much that is warranting very large amounts of fear and panic. And if 2020 isn't the year of panic, I don't know what is. But okay, so I found it. The Box Elder County Sheriff's Department put on Facebook today, I believe. Information has been circulating via Facebook and other social media sites that Antifa plans to go door to door in protest from Logan to Provo. If someone answers, they will shoot them just to prove that Black Lives Matter. We cannot substantiate the validity of this information, but want to advise all of our followers that just to be safe, if your doorbell rings or you get a knock at the door, to verify who is on the other side before opening. My brother updated me later and sent me another post that they had put out, and I guess there had been some discussion in the community in reaction to that post that they put out. And here's what they said. Quote, "Okay, message received. The posting about door to door has been deleted. However, you need to know that we use the same network as all other law enforcement agencies in the state to try and establish this was true or not, and best recommendations were to put out a warning. It was put out there with the same interest in mind as any other agency, to inform the public. If something would have happened and we didn't put it out, we would have been irresponsible. Apologies for the issues. The post was brought to our attention from another Facebook post, so we did our best to establish any truth. It was already out there, and quite frankly, things are so crazy right now that this is not impossible. Our fault for not properly wording things from the start. Other agencies did a much better job of that. At this moment in the current climate, it's baffling to me that the sheriff's county, like the sheriff department of a county, would issue that statement, and then that first statement, which it's not worded in such a way that they're saying that they're speculating or that they've heard it. They lay out the rumor in wording and phrasing that a law enforcement agency should not do. That's just undue panic. There's a thing that happens when you are in a position of management of other people where you don't do that. You don't phrase things in such a way, because coming from somebody that we are supposed to deem as an official in our community, somebody who knows what they're talking about, if they straight up say, if you open the door, this person will shoot you just for opening the door to prove that Black Lives Matter, like, that is such a speculative statement. So to come from a law enforcement agency is just irresponsible. So for them to put out that statement in the first place, oh, bad on them. In my personal opinion, in this current climate, they boo-booed right there. And if they didn't do it on purpose, then my thought would be that their retraction statement would be something along the lines of, hey guys, we apologize, we didn't phrase that correctly, our bad. Like, they would own it at least, or they would at least politically own it, like political speak. But they did not. They came out and were like really snide about it, like super like snippy.
Big babies.
I mean, your community's holding you accountable, and that's how you're going to react to it.
No.
I don't feel great about that. That's kind of the premise of what's happening right now, I think, is that there's this divide quickly showing up. Not just, and I want to make this clear because I think that this is important. It still, I think, is an illusion that this is about Black Lives Matter. And that particular movement is a component of this overarching issue that's coming up very quickly and dividing our country. And we are literally seeing our country on fire right now. And I think that that's not just a metaphor for what's actually happening structurally.
Mm-hmm. I think that's important to keep in mind that obviously there's nothing against the Black Lives Matter movement concept itself, the positivity and the message behind supporting individuals that are struggling and that have struggled for so long. That is very real, and that for that we have respect. And also, it's not just about that. This has gone way before any of that, even up to over 100 years ago. We're looking at the cycle of history. We're looking at things that have happened, and how everything has lined up so strategically in so many ways to then provide us with this end game that we're going to talk about, which we're getting to the end of this, which is kind of why we're freaking out a little bit here and have been for a while, because stuff's going down and it's become very, very real and we cannot ignore it anymore. So like, we're back to the Black Lives Matter movement. It is a piece of this puzzle, a piece of the plan. And it is a big piece. And it is one of the main things, the main pieces that will then push forward to the next big step in this story. So thoughts on that?
The big plan. So I think here's the thing, to give context to what's happening right now, is that we are super passionate because we are terrified. There are a number of things that I've said this before, but I've been noticing some of these pieces being put into place. And in the last 2 months, we've been all collectively noticing these pieces being put into place. And it's like, there's in general this shift that's happening that we all can feel, and we all like know that it's happening, but we don't quite understand it. And I think that we're all kind of chalking it up to a certain degree to the chaos of a natural, organic period of time that there were some unfortunate events that all kind of sequenced and spiraled out of control. And I think that it's important, we're passionate enough about this, that it's important that now we kind of get clear on the fact that these aren't precisely organic events. Coronavirus and the pandemic and the sequence of events that happened around the coronavirus pandemic are not precisely organic. There are a lot of things that went down, and now that we've come out of it, there are some things that we can see that were blown so far out of proportion that it leads to questions of, if they didn't know any better at the time, then that's one thing, but they should have been prepared at the time. And so that's gross negligence. And so if that's not the case and they did know, then that's another issue altogether, right? Like there are, I think, a number of glaring issues that we could go into about all of those events and how it's leading up to what we can now kind of trace back to. I mean, let's just talk about it. So there's a document that the Rockefeller Foundation put out, and in it, they basically ran 4 scenarios. So you can look this up online. It's actually pretty fascinating because what they did was they gathered a bunch of people and they scenarioed a bunch of different types of events, and they basically said, well, what things would happen, like what ordinary circumstances aside would lead to certain types of events in response to a global pandemic, is the first scenario that we're going to talk about. So that scenario, they called it lockstep. And here's the description that they wrote for this simulation that they ran. It's like they gather a bunch of people and kind of mind map a simulation. It's called lockstep, a world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. So that's the title, that's a description of the lockstep scenario. And if you actually read the lockstep scenario, which I'm going to encourage you to do, you should look this up. Read the lockstep scenario, and it goes through basically this pandemic that starts in Asia. It might have been Brazil. There are a few scenarios where they've simulated pandemic breakouts, so I'm getting them confused. But there's this pandemic that breaks out, and it causes mass hysteria. It goes into lockdowns. It goes into, or social distancing specifically, and it goes into a number of different things that we actually saw come out in the recent months. Some of them are historically unprecedented, meaning that they're in this document, they're written out. So it's not that they're brand new ideas per se, but they haven't actually been played out in society up until coronavirus or COVID-19.
Yeah. So I am not as smart as Tiger. And so I have a little bit of a hard time grasping exactly sometimes what she's talking about. So we think that we make a good pair in this type of project, because then for people that have different levels of understanding, I haven't been fully completely involved in like the political stuff. So I'm learning a ton, and I'm trying to read as much as I can also and listen to as many lectures as I can. But essentially what she's saying is, excuse me, this document was created by this company who is simulating these different world chaos scenarios. So this was done, what time was this one released?
Let me look it up.
The other one was last year, right?
Yeah, Event 201 happened last year.
Yeah, so there's been a couple of these. An Event 201 is a big one that you can also watch on YouTube, and we encourage you to watch it. Essentially, they gathered a group to go through the different scenarios and what each what would happen in each structure of the city. So what would happen with the government, what would happen with the people, with the jobs, with different things that would happen economically, and with the stock market and stuff like that. So predictions of these scenarios that almost completely mirror exactly what we have been experiencing. I didn't believe it at first. I watched the videos and was like mind blown. And it's almost like you're watching the news because it seems so real, the things that they're actually talking about. So anyway, this is a similar simulation, and they created this document, the summary of it, and that's what she's going over. So to catch you guys up.
So catchy. I'm not finding where the here we go. May 2010 was when this document was published. The name of it is Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development. So let me actually read you the snippet. Like Jazz just said, there if you don't know who the Rockefeller Foundation is, I could do a whole situation on that, and I'm not going to. But you should look them up because they are instrumental in a number of things that have shaped our society. So that's basically what you need to know about this group. And here we go. One important and novel component, quote, one important and novel component of our strategy toolkit is scenario planning, a process of creating narratives about the future based on factors likely to affect a particular set of challenges and opportunities. We believe that scenario planning has great potential for use in philanthropy to identify unique interventions, simulate and rehearse important decisions that could have profound implications and highlight previously undiscovered areas of connection and intersection. Most important, by providing a methodological, why? Methodological. Gosh, say that word, you guys. Try it really hard. Structure that helps us focus on what we don't know instead of what we already have. Scenario planning allows us to achieve impact more efficiently. So basically, what it's saying is they're taking kind of like the human, like mind mapping version of what AI would be to solve a problem. So they put the scenario out there to see, okay, in the case of a global pandemic, what would government agencies, how do we predict certain countries would react given the current dynamic and the economy? And as you read through the document, each of these different scenarios takes a moment in time, which is right around the 2001 attacks on 9/11. They take right around that time frame and they project out into the future what's going to happen with the economy and the way that certain things could go down. So going back to Lockstep, which is all about a pandemic that, again, very, very similarly mirrors in terms of the events and the policies that are put into place. And I think that's the piece to underscore here is that I don't think it's about predicting. Like there's this thing that came out about Event 201 that's like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist because you're saying that Event 201 predicted the pandemic, and it's not about that. It's about the fact that Event 201 and this specific scenario were scenarios that were laid out specifically to to outline the policies that were implemented during this pandemic. They were like handbooks that somebody took off the shelf and were like, okay, we're going to go with masks, we're going to go with social distancing, we're going to go with lockdowns, we're going to go with bring out the military, we're going to go with all of these different things, and here's how it goes. Like there, if you notice the quick succession of all of these different agencies like implementing things, Trump would pass an executive order and bam, like all of a sudden we've got ventilators across the country. Like that doesn't just happen. And the same thing with the tests, all of the big, like the huge things we saw, like fireworks popping off with COVID-19 over the past few months, I think are examples. And we're seeing the very same thing now. We're seeing popping off of all of these different protests in different states. We've seen the exact same pattern of those where we've seen popping off of where we've got protesters who are showing up and they're just peaceful, but then the riots turn angry and violent. And then we've got disclosures from Trump and the Attorney General of the United States saying that, oh, these are actually groups. We know who they are. They're called Antifa, and they go around and they mess people up. Cool. So let's call in the military, and you guys all have to lock down your cities now. We've seen like multiple like cases of that popping off, and now what we're seeing is multiple cases where it's being shown now that these groups are so terrible that they've been designated domestic terrorists, which I hope you guys understand what the designation, the official legal definition of domestic terrorism means. It means that you literally have no rights. You're no American citizen to me. You're a terrorist. I'm going to treat you as such, and whatever I say goes. That's what that means. So anybody they think could possibly be linked to Antifa running around causing destruction in a city now can be labeled a terrorist, ... like connect them. So these are the things that we're seeing, like I said, policy wise, that just get rolled out, which they're being rolled out without our involvement, without our say so, without our discussion. I mean,
Behind the scenes,
Speak about that.
which is just what it seems to be like. All of the there's always some kind of distraction to then slip a bill or pass a policy or change something. So that's why there have been so many distractions because lots is going on behind the scenes.
Lots is going on behind the scenes. Yeah, so let's see. The other three events, or excuse me, simulations that were put together in this document are called heart attack, or excuse me, hack attack. Quote, an economically unstable and shock prone world in which governments weaken, criminals thrive, and dangerous innovations emerge. Huh. If you read this document, the way that the simulation plays out, so again, coronavirus was very similar to the lockstep scenario. Hack attack seems very similar to me to what's happening right now, which is kind of why we're doing this video right now, spur of the moment, because I was like, holy crap. So hack attack is this scenario where the economy is like super unstable and some stuff has happened to destabilize the economy. At that time, it's the 9/11 attacks. And then from there, the government organizations start to kind of like not really have the same, maybe it's the same focus, you could say, as far as what their like economic warfare is. So, for example, it outlines that the United States starts pulling their like manufacturers and stuff back to the United States and starts manufacturing stuff here. That they start kind of going back to that pre-Berlin Wall fall time, which is very. I mean, Trump wants to put a wall on the border of Mexico because damn those Mexicans, but he's not about trying to put a wall on the border of Canada because that's fine. Like we can deal with Canadians, but like it's these things that are in there that just make me feel like I don't know, I don't know, I don't know that it's possible to just dismiss this as being a scenario played out again to implement some policies that we're actually seeing now. So another thing that's in here is that as the governments weaken, they have to start calling in the militia to contain their people. um, and criminals just thrive because they're looting and rioting. Like you can't make this up. It's in their documentation. Okay, I'm gonna let you take it for a second before I get crazy.
Okay, so let's take it back to just an overall how did we get here? And I think that just a really short version of this would be just going back to the early 1900s, late 1800s, where we started seeing, the governments coming together and shaping in certain ways and starting to create social engineering. And with social engineering, we're looking at a lot of basic things that we do every day, like pay our taxes, or have some babies, or own a house, or all of these different things. Oh, get married. There's all of these different things that the government has given us a little reward for doing, like good little kids, good little pets. And that is how we implement, what is it called, positive reinforcement, and which is also messing with you psychologically, in case you didn't know.
Social engineering.
So social engineering, they're taking advantage of individuals psychologically and creating all of these different things so that we can take advantage of these opportunities by buying a house and all of these things that I listed. So over the years, they're creating, they're shaping us by doing these things. They're shaping their society the way that they want it, the way that they want the medical system to be, the way that they want certain corporations to be in charge. And this isn't anything like you can see this. You don't have to do any kind of research. You can go outside and look your fucking window. Sorry, F word. But it's out there, and you don't have to be, a super genius to see that these things are out there. So, anyway, social engineering has shifted us and created us into this being where we are over consumers. We eat like shit. We have no respect for our planet. We have no respect for each other, which are all these concepts that really bring us to what we really are as humans. And so we're losing touch of that. And the reason why we are losing touch of that, which I feel is imprisonment, um, is because they want us to be their slaves. Okay, short version, they want to control us. And how? They want us to buy the houses that they want us to buy. They want us to shop at places that they want us to shop. They want us to watch the things that they want us to watch, and they want us to do the things that they want us to do. So that is how you imprison someone, okay? And we have been prisoners to this government and this monster of a society that has been created and we've been born into. Have no idea what's going on. This is just normal. Okay? It's not normal. And the things that are happening now and opening our eyes are showing us that this is not how you survive or thrive as a human race. What do you say?
It's the normal because we've let it be, but it's not acceptable. So we should do something different. I feel.
Yeah, that's where we have to change and we have to stand our ground, because now over the course of the years and to the way that our food is made and our things are processed and our homes are manufactured, they have the control over all of that. We don't have a say. We're just in this society, and now they have demolished our economy to make us unable to stand up for ourselves, and we are just homeless, unemployed individuals that can't even feed ourselves. So, breaking down the economy is a huge piece in this, because we are weak, right? They're weakening us. COVID, they're weakening us.
Well, and why? Like,
Right.
why would they want to weaken the economy?
Exactly.
We are not dependent on them unless they restructure the economy. And they've already been doing that all along the way. And this is another huge step where they took our currency and they stripped it of any actual material value. And then they started like messing with it and started messing with it and started messing with it. And President Obama compounded the nation's debt more than any other president before him combined. And Trump, in one fell swoop, has outdone Obama in that feat. Like, there is a huge disparity right now happening between it's just cognitive dissonance. It's like people are hearing, oh, Trump is going to stimulate the economy and good on him because he's going to save us all.
Guys,
$1,200 check
Guys.
for everybody. And
guys.
it's like, no, you guys, he's making you dependent on him. Well, not on him, because it's not Trump. It's not about Trump, to be clear. It's not about Trump. It's not about Democrats and Republicans. It's not about any of that. But it's just, no. Like, the $1,200 stimulus check is the government's way of being like, here, don't look, don't look, don't look. While I give Jeff Bezos the opportunity, listen, guys, Jeff Bezos by 2026 is projected to be the world's first trillionaire.
Trillion.
In large part due to coronavirus. How many of you guys are shopping online on Amazon this entire past few months because you can't go to the store, because you can't go to the store? And meanwhile, all your mom and pop shops that have what you need in stock right there are going out of business and will never be open again.
So many businesses shut down, and I mean, how can you thrive in that?
Guys, in a just world, $1,200 is a spit in the face and worse. Like, no. And I feel like when all of that was unfolding, everybody was so panicked about the virus and about whether we were going to get sick or not. And listen, that's the point. There's all of this confusion happening and nobody really understands what's going on. And so just to be safe, they're going to try everything that's recommended. Okay, I have a really great analogy for this. I hear in our daily life with the work that we do that people are confused when they go to the grocery store. They read a label, they're not really sure how much protein then should they have, what is protein, what should I even eat. I hear all of these questions that are so demonstrative of the lack of education that we have about our physical bodies. Guys, this is not rocket science. I am not a rocket scientist, but I have answers to these questions because there is research out there to be given. And yet the media puts all of these options out in front of you. Do you do thermogenics? Do you do keto? Do you do the water diet? Like it's
The
over
water
and over
diet.
and over. They throw so much stuff at you that obviously you have to try this one and you got to try
Uh-huh.
that one. And if you don't try this one, you might not lose that last 10 pounds because the guy on the video says so. You know what
And
I'm saying?
every single person, I don't even know what to get. Does any? I mean, what should I get?
It makes me so mad because
Mm.
this has been done to us. Like it's not a factor of you just didn't know. It's this has been done to you if you have resonated with any of the things that we just said. Like I want you to be really understanding that that's what we're telling you. The same thing is happening with COVID-19, where it was this information about testing, but then turned out later that they adjusted it because the models were way wrong. And oops, sorry, but let's go ahead and continue with the lockdowns. Hush, hush. Like,
Which, by the way, where did COVID-19 go? Does anybody even have it anymore?
I don't think so because the fires, rioting, and
The
graffiti.
the fires scared them
Yeah.
away. They
All
ran
the little
away.
viruses were like, oh gosh.
They're like,
Right
these guys
though?
are crazy. Let's get out of here.
Seriously. But also,
Yeah.
here's the thing. I don't know if you guys follow Trump, but I do because even though he's a complete angel.
All the words.
Um, even though Trump incites a lot of things that are problematic for me personally, he does a really good job of telling us what's going on. Like he does a really he's got a great game. Like he does really, if you know how to like read, I'm not great at it, but if you know anything about like how to pick up on neurolinguistic programming, if you understand like political buzzword cues, just do a little research on that and then come back to one of his videos and all of a sudden all his stupid mannerisms that you can't understand why you hate will make so much sense. The word he says billion or million, the way he says that, it's on purpose. Like just
Oh my god.
yeah.
And then the thing that I notice is he's really good at letting us know how good of a job he does.
Yeah.
I
always.
did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Talk about something else. Oh, by the way, I did this, I did this, I did this. Okay,
Yes.
buddy, we get it. And yeah, Yasmin, what's the mind blown? What is your
Douche
mind
canoe.
blown?
Not even surprised.
Douche canoe.
Let's talk about that though. So his accomplishments, the way that he does this thing where he lists all his accomplishments sometimes. I've noticed that he does that so that he can point us to specific things while he's doing all this other shit behind the curtain, guys. Like
Yeah.
it's hilarious to me in a way that it only can be hilarious because it's so maddening. Because we're not paying
100,000
attention.
tests. 100,000 tests.
The tests.
We are the leading in tests in the world.
In the world. Even
In
more
the
than North
world.
Korea.
Even everybody.
Guys, I'm gonna pull up this statistic because it's amazing. It's so great. So they were like making this huge big deal. Trump again listing his Shell explaining. Yep. Yep, we did. So they were making a huge big deal. Like I said, he was listing his accomplishments and whatnot about the testing. And wouldn't you know, it turns out that by the end of it, they've made such a big deal out of testing in order to you got to test all the people. All the experts say so. You got to test everybody. So Trump was like, hey, let's do all the testing. So they ramp up a bunch of testing. Well, the testing has proven to be insufficient and inconsistent and also problematic and based on flawed science. But yet we've done so many tests and Trump has done such a good job. So you got to pat him on the back for that. But you look at the numbers, of how many tests he's done. Let's see if I can find it.
It doesn't matter if they were wrong. They got done, and that's what matters. All those people's noses got swabbed. Way up there.
Okay, let's see. This is great. Keep talking because I haven't found it.
Yeah, I'm looking at some information here, just kind of while Tiger's pulling some stuff up. We're gonna be doing some peaceful demonstrations throughout the week, so we'd love to have anybody that can participate join us. And so we'll just be announcing same day, I think, but likely several times this week. So let's do that. and go down and be peaceful and say, we're not gonna take it. We're not gonna take it.
You guys love us. Okay, wait. So I found it. Check this out. Okay, so guys, back at the beginning, remember way back when they were like, COVID-19, you're gonna get it, I'm gonna get it, we're all gonna get it, and we're gonna die. Like back in the initial phases of the mass panic, the like biggest number they projected globally would die, not would get it, but specifically would die of coronavirus, was 1,700,000. Why you laughing? You laughing because that did not happen? Um, if you think that's amazing, because I'm going to tell you how many people actually have died as of May 15th.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, let's look at how many people actually have died. It was 308,131 as of May 15th when I pulled these numbers and put this chart together.
Not a million.
Not 1,000,007.
I thought it was 2 million that they predicted.
Oh yeah, that was the low end. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually have that too right here.
So yeah,
1.7 to 2.4.
like, everybody get in your houses, lock up your stores, don't go outside. 2 million people are gonna die.
Oh no, it was 214 million would get infected, and then 21 up to 21 would need hospitalizations. I think this was an adjustment that happened mid-March, if I'm remembering correctly. I can't see it on my page because I moved it, but okay, so there's that. And then let's talk, going back to the testing though, because that was the whole point of finding this stat for you guys. So the number of people who are projected to die, 1.7 million, let's call it that number, may have been higher, but the number of people who actually had died as of May 15th, and let's clarify, this is assuming that all of the numbers that they have told us of deaths were actually dying of coronavirus.
Right. Because we were hearing rumors of possibly people labeling deaths incorrectly.
Yes, we'll leave it there. Plenty of information for that for you. But as of May 15th, the number of people the number of coronavirus tests performed in the United States alone, so those numbers we were talking about before are global, in the United States alone, good on Trump because he did over 11 million tests.
Oh! Yeah!
Like, why?
Hold shit.
But think about it. Like, why is it that we would make such a big deal in the press about the tests and do so many tests? And here's the deal. Like, obviously, you're going to do more tests than the number of individual people, right? But is it really necessary to do that many more than the number of people who were projected to die across the world? I don't frankly understand that. And here's the deal. I would be totally like, I would eat the crow if somebody were to tell me who could actually like back it up with some information, but I don't understand that. So that's where I'm at with that. I'm like, okay, so the test to me seems like it was a whole what is it called, not a dog whistle, but it's not gaslighting, although I think the government does that to us too, but a situation for them to like dangle a little thing for us to like pay attention to. Yeah, a distraction. Like, we're doing so many tests, but meanwhile, people aren't actually dying of the virus. People are dying with it, but these people, the mass majority of them, have other issues, and that's been documented over and over. And then it turns out that the flu is actually basically the same death rate. And so, are we actually seeing coronavirus deaths, or are they flu deaths? Then it turns out that the science that demonstrates that coronavirus exists in a new form called SARS-CoV-2, and that it has a potential to cause the disease COVID-19. That new discovery, the research, is deeply flawed. It just misses a whole bunch of stuff in the research process that they didn't do when they published the paper and were like, "Hey, we found a new virus," and then they're like parsing genome sequences off of that flawed science, and they're running away with it, but they're only talking about the tests, and then they're shoving these numbers in your faces. They're saying, "Oh, the number of new tests today, and the number of new cases, and the number of new deaths," and they're reporting these numbers so out of context that everybody has no choice but to panic, because they're like, "Guess how many people got COVID today?" And it's like, well, they're ramping up tests because they didn't have tests before, so by the
Right.
nature of statistics, if you do more
Exactly.
tests, there will be more cases. I mean, Trump even says this in a press conference, and
Yeah.
we still don't get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then part of that, I think, too, is just the media trying to make things like seem worse than they are because that's their job.
Hmm.
So, well, I'm saying some people, but I don't know. I think that's pretty ridiculous.
It's ridiculous and it's unfortunate because it's like it makes it so that we can't have an actual honest conversation about people are dying of something. It makes it so that we can't actually have that conversation because they're standing in the way of it by putting this illusion in front of us about, oh, well, you're a conspiracy theorist or you're a horrible person if you don't want to wear a mask or you're terrible if you think that the social distancing thing is not real. Guys, the social distancing philosophy or like the what do we call it earlier, the procedure, the policy that
Mhm.
was like written out in a handbook somewhere for them to reference in a situation that they needed a reference for, that scenario was written by a 14-year-old girl who was doing a science project. Like there are some things that I think are being very vastly misunderstood that lead to us doing stuff and shaming each other and turning on each other and encouraging each other to do stuff that's wildly inappropriate for our health, for our sanity, for our mental health and our emotional stability. Like these things are not rocket science, and yet we're allowing a number flashing on a screen at you every single day to
Mhm.
cause so much fear and panic that
Mhm.
you're letting that take over. And you, the collective you, us, we.
Right, right. So, and then that brings me to we're coming into social engineering and what is has been put out in the media for us to actually grasp onto. So, there are so many things that now with the development of technology, we have um, developed into like an introverted type of being. Like Americans already were distant enough to begin with, but I mean, in like comparison to other cultures and stuff. But so with the United States already being as separated as is, and then having this lockdown and creating more separation, where was I going with this?
Let me pull it from your brain.
um, so anyway, just the fact that the media stuff. So the social engineering and everything that's put out in the media for us has has had us create this kind of trust with the government. We believe that they're going to take care of us. We believe that they're there to protect us. The trust with all of these different entities and people delivering messages to us. If a Smith says so, then I believe it. And we don't know where they're getting their information from. We are not doing further research to see what's actually happening, and they're banking on that.
Mm-hmm.
So many people are so scared to go out of their homes. Or I mean, I had a friend say the other day when the alarm thing went off or the alert for the curfew went on their kid's phone. The kid called mom and said, "Can I leave my friend's house? Am I allowed to leave? We're up at or we're down in the south end of the valley." And she's like, "Yeah, come home," But it's just this very hazy or this very hazy message that they've delivered to us, and now they have this control over us. They have control over all of our children because all they do is watch TV and are on the internet for the most part, and they're banking on that. So with the development of technology, they have more control over us, and they're trying to push that further into further developments of technology, digital identity, digital scanning everywhere, digital currency, all of these things. That's what we're pushing toward now. And you can clearly see they have control over us. Everybody's listening. Everybody shuts down their stores. I mean, I've heard of some people not doing it and whatnot, but
They've done a great job of training us. Like, this is what lockdown is. So, after the quarantine, which quarantine makes
right.
sense when you're in the midst of the very beginning of a global pandemic. Quarantine, that word, it makes sense to you. But then after a little bit, it's like, okay, people start getting restless. So then they changed the narrative. Instead of quarantine, then they were calling it what?
Curfew.
Lockdown. They were calling it
Oh,
lockdown.
lockdown.
And now they're calling it curfew,
Curfew.
because now it's like this civil unrest situation. So everybody's got to go home because there's a bunch of like, criminals and you're going to get up to no good. So it's curfew now. Like,
Not to mention, they're like, oh, Once you're in this phase, you can lift restrictions, blah, blah, blah.
But the
Oh,
goalposts
by
keep
the way,
moving.
guess what? We're going to have curfew and you can't be out on the streets. Oh, we're going to do that just this weekend because of the riots. Oh, by the way, we're actually going to be doing curfew all week long. Oh, by the way, you can't leave your house for the rest of your fucking life. I don't know, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I hate that. Well, okay, so you're bringing up a good point though, because there's this general ambiguity in between each goalpost moving. So like they'll say something
Right.
and everybody's like, what does it mean? What do we do? Can I do this? And everybody's like so afraid that they do the just in case thing, which is they stay home, they kind of like order
Stay
out.
safe.
They do all the like on the in case side of things, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And it is so frustrating that they do this to us. They put us in that position, and this is psychological torment. They put us in that position specifically so that we will become malleable, controllable. They'll be able to kind of position us in the ways that they want to. So now, if they say, "Hey, get back in your house. There's a lockdown," everybody's gonna just do it.
Not to mention divided. Okay, so I'm not going to get into that, but so dividing us now, you wear a mask, you don't wear a mask. You're good, you're bad. What are you? Whose side are you on? Black or
BLM,
white? What are we
Antifa.
doing? Say that again.
BLM, Antifa.
Where are we? Who are we? What are we doing? And it's just fucking ridiculous because then not only are we weak, we're divided. We are weak, divided people. Damn it! I need to get my charger. Okay.
I'm gonna help you with that.
You got it?
Well, no, I don't actually.
Okay,
I
I'll
thought I
just-
had one.
You're good.
Okay, so let's talk about the duality that we were just talking about. Um, so we're getting to kind of like further down in what we want to talk about, and I think at this point it will be pertinent to kind of explain the way that we are going to always come at things is that we don't think that we know anything in particular about what's going on or about anything in general. Frankly, I think that what's more important about what's happening for us is that we can identify certain things that are documented, that we can see, that have been kind of given to us. And some of these things I think are given to us on kind of like a subconscious level on purpose so that we can see all of these movies where certain scenarios happen. And then it doesn't completely blow our minds when we walk into the 7-Eleven and see plastic shields and tape on the floor because we've seen that in movies before. We're not completely shocked when we see the National Guard in a fully decked boots, uniform, freaking like rifles and everything, marching down the street in a line, marching down the street of a suburban area, and then shooting rubber bullets at people who are just hanging out on their porch, screaming at them to get back inside. That scenario I saw, I believe it was in. I'm not going to quote it. I think it was Minnesota.
Wasn't that
actually.
the one that I posted?
Probably. And then we've seen that in movies before, like I said. And so when we saw it in real life, it was surprising. It surprised me. Well, I don't know. It just didn't blow my mind. It made so much sense that obviously that's what they're going to do because I've seen that in so many movies over and over that it's just the way that it goes. So hold on.
Sorry, guys. Or
Work. So anyway, I think with what we were talking about with the duality, though, what I wanted to explain is that there is this thing happening now. Oh,
okay. Are we good? You there?
Hello. So there's this thing happening now with this duality paradigm that I think is extremely important that we all recognize before it completely destroys us. They're trying to tell us now that the Democratic Party in the United States, and I frankly have been so consumed with these riots that I don't even know really what's going on the global scale, and that's probably done on purpose. But the riots that are happening right now, they're telling us that they are being orchestrated by this group called Antifa, which it's kind of being, I think, kind of loosened to where they're just saying terrorists now. They're not specifically, I don't think, tying it to Antifa directly, but we know who funds Antifa. Like, we know who that organization is. There is documented information about them, and they frequently clash with Black Lives Matter. There are documented incidents where Black Lives Matter has come out in response to a killing or something, and they come out and they have a police brutality protest, and there are like, snippets of things happening where Antifa comes out and basically, like, from the inside out, destroys the protests and makes them look bad. And you have to wonder, if this has been documented, that is happening, and it's happening now, and we know who these people are, then why is it that Trump is out here now? He's calling for all of the governors to pull the National Guard out and put them on the streets and send them to your homes and control the peace or whatever, because there's these crazy terrorists running around, and yet we know who they are. Like, cut off their head and there we go.
Right. Yeah. If you have them identified, then why do we continue down this progressive road of destruction? It's just like, why would we do the lockdown if we had like all this information about the virus? Why would we, all these different things that just pieces that don't make sense, which is essentially what we come down to, is like, what actually makes sense here? So we have to ask every single question, and every piece of media that comes out, including local, we have to question its authenticity, because we have to judge for ourselves. What do we think?
Yeah. And that
personally?
includes Facebook, for example, because Facebook is an organization that outrightly and blatantly tells you that they're censoring their platform. So everything you see on Facebook is given to you for a reason. You're seeing certain things, and there's other things that you aren't seeing, or the order in which, and the response and the timing according to your posts. They do a lot of like analytics manipulation on the back end, and so does Google. When you type something into Google, you're getting exactly what Google wants you to see. And both of those organizations are tied very closely with the CIA, because the CIA does a whole lot of surveillance, and they need an arm to be able to kind of like orchestrate different ways of surveilling individuals that they would want to get wiretaps on, or that they would want to be able to identify information on. And you see that come out in things like the Parkland shooting and other major incidents, where the FBI or the CIA or whatever will come through and do an investigation or a release on information, and they basically admit to you how they got that information is through Facebook or through Twitter. They compel Apple to open their iPhone. Like, it's documented that this is the relationship that these major mega corporations have. And when people say, I don't have anything to hide, so when the CIA is listening to me and this thing pops up on my Facebook, it's weird and creepy, but it's okay. It's not actually okay, guys. These systems have been put in place all along, and we've been conditioned to think that it's silly to be concerned about it. And why have we been conditioned to not care? So that they can do it. And now what we're seeing is the implementation of a surveillance grid that's going to take all of that data, amalgamize it into an AI system that can predict whether you're sick when they inject you with their new bio vaccinations, biotechnology in the vaccines that's going to make you more susceptible to what the agents that they want to give you are. So if they put something in the vaccine, they're going to put a biotechnology agent in there to make you more susceptible to it. And now they're talking about the vaccine is not going to just specifically be about coronavirus, because turns out you can't actually vaccinate against SARS-CoV-2. They've tried so many different ways to do the first one. They roll out the second one, and turns out you can't vaccinate against it. Oh my God. What are we to do? Oh, I know. Let's put some biotechnology into the virus to make these people a genetically modified organism. And that way we can mess around with their genetics, get the virus vaccine to take, and whatever's in that vaccine goes.
And we're looking
Not making this up.
Nanotechnology that can manipulate the different responses that your brain nerve endings send to each other. So, like unto an SSRI, or any type of medication, or anything that is going to manipulate your brain function, they have developed a way to be able to manipulate that, by injecting you with this biotechnology.
And they're doing it under the guise of needing to be able to read your body's symptoms.
Because life will be easier if I can just look at my app and say, my blood pressure's this, my vitamin D level's this, pop a vitamin D. And wouldn't that be really cool, guys? And that's how they're going to sell it to you.
Oh, wait, Jesse, what's this? It says you're going to get coronavirus in 2 weeks.
What the?
Not making it up. Go look it up. Go look it up.
which then brings us to contact tracing, and going back to, sorry, I had a thought on just the development of technology and how we're saying like we've been conditioned, we knew this was coming, but didn't you ever find it a little bit eerie how Alexa just knows all these things and people were always like asking her questions and getting weird answers? Isn't that a song? Asking some questions, getting some
I have
answers.
not seen that. You're gonna have to show that to me.
It's a Little Mermaid.
Yeah, but I haven't seen that spiffy video you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyway,
You love us.
sorry. So Little Mermaid. So we're just saying so the technology that has come out and crap.
You're
now
talking
I
about the
lost-
vaccines and the nanotechnology.
Yeah,
And how the new identity passports that they're putting together are going to be based on a vaccination record. So instead of having an arbitrary just randomized like serial number for your ID, it's going to be based on your medical vaccination record, and that's the premise of whether you have an ID or not.
Mm-hmm. Do you exist in the system? Well, you can't go shopping if you don't. And you also, I mean, obviously, you can't go on an airplane. They're already implementing that in China.
Yeah. So what they're saying is instead of going to the like identification place and giving them your like mail and your birth certificate and your social security card to prove your identity, you take them your vaccination record. You say, hey, I've got X, Y, and Z. So under these guys' new policies that they put in place, they can say whatever they want is the vaccination that you have to get in order to have a valid license or an ID. And that ID is your ability to interact with the rest of the world. So just imagine that's what we're talking about when we talk about a surveillance grid of control. It's about the ability to literally decide in a second they can turn off your new bank account that's digital and that they control because it's new. It's the new governmental digital currency that is directly tied to whether you have a valid ID. And sorry, go renew it.
And sorry, all of the employers are required by law to go under this new system, and that's how they pay their employees. So this is the road that we're heading on right now, and it is a question of, are we going to reach that final destination, or are we going to change our path willingly?
I feel like the way that we have to understand that is that if we just go along with everything that's being said without even questioning it, we're gonna stumble ass backwards into all of this stuff that we don't need to be doing, but that they're hoping we'll just go along with it so that they can kind of get away with the stuff that they want to be able to do. And what I mean by that is, for example, like Jazz just said, with implementing these policies, that then they tell the business owners, oh, here's the government package. You want your stimulus, you want your loan, you want your grant. Here's what you have to do. Your employees have to do X, Y, and Z. And, tear up the Constitution, because what does it matter? Because we declared a national emergency. Even though, guys, look up what a national emergency is and what executive orders are. These are literal measures that have been put in place to let people bypass the traditional measures that we're supposed to be able to count on that keep our government officials accountable. Oh, I'm going on such a rant.
It's true, though. It's true. And it's really terrifying for us because then that means they can do whatever the fuck they want. Oh, it says I think it's saying that we have to wrap this up.
That is, but we're on YouTube.
Oh.
Okay, let's just continue though, for the sake of it, because we have some time. Do you want to start here?
Right here. So,
Or do you want to start that?
Oh, we already talked about that. Okay. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about is what are we looking at here? Which we've kind of covered a couple of things already, which is that we are moving to we're having a technological revolution. And we're moving to a different system. And essentially what we're looking at is New World Order. And it's a freaky word and it's a freaky thing to think of because what does that mean? that means that everything is going to change.
And they're calling it new normal.
Yeah, it already has a name, the new normal. What does the new normal already have us doing?
Get away from me.
Staying
Can I
away
hug
from
you?
each other.
Can I look at you? Can I touch you?
Entirely.
Are you dreaming?
Only video chatting
Guys.
and not shaking hands, not touching, not loving, which also messes with you psychologically. Touch, love, affection, all of those things are things that we need. It says,
Keep going.
oh, what?
Keep going.
All of those, sorry, I'm all distracted.
We got lost
now.
on Instagram, but I'm going to, ooh, guys, my tacos. I'm so fired up about this. Those of you who watch this and don't know me, I'm excited to meet you. My name's Tiger Lily. Hi.
So what was the last word I said? I don't remember. Guys, I can't.
We were talking about,
New normal.
The new normal. Go ahead.
Okay, so we've already labeled it the new normal. Sorry if I lost track at some point, but the point is that they are changing, making these changes slowly. And like I said before, if you look at history, they've already started that 100 years ago with the type of social engineering that they've already put in place, and the way that they've guided us to build our communities and live our lives. So the things that we are doing now, like paying our taxes and registering our cars and filling up our cars with gas and going to the grocery store and all of our normal things, are not going to be normal anymore. We're going to have a new normal. And those things in the new normal currently are small and like, hey, I can get used to this. This is fine. Like you hear, oh, virus is coming. Let's just put a mask on. Let's all these things. That's cool and everything. But wait until they tell you or come down the street in their huge fucking tanks shooting at your house, at your porch, because you're not supposed to be outside. And that's the new normal. Okay. So that's a huge extreme. And that's where we're heading, right? Um, Along with when we get a little bit further into like the AI portion of it and the technological revolution and how the government wants to, or whatever entity. And for me, honestly, I I couldn't say it is one person. I couldn't say it is a group. I don't know who is behind this, and I honestly, when I gather my opinions and I know, I'll say. But at this point, I don't know who's in charge of this, but I feel like there is some type of entity behind running all of, like, orchestrating this huge event over the course of all of these years to then come to this final end game where it is essentially the imprisonment of humanity. We will become workers. We'll listen to everything they say. We will follow the rules and we will work for them. And we'll be paid on their system and we will do what they say when they say it. We will visit our families when they say. We will go to the store when they say.
We will work out when they say. We will sleep when they say. We will eat what they say.
Yeah, I mean, we're already eating what they say, and it's imprisonment. We have no freedom here. There is no freedom.
No freedom.
We have been born into a prison.
And for no fault of like necessarily our own, but it's interesting to point that out when you end up recognizing just how far we have come along this like last little bit of time in like right tail end of 2019 into 2020. And you can really kind of like start looking at the big ramp up, but like this period of time has been explosive. And so what I think is, to kind of like bring a positive note in, it's what I think is maybe interesting about that fact is that now that they've accelerated their timeline so quickly, it's becoming a little bit easier to see the holes in their narrative. And when Fauci says that we've got to prepare for 1.7 million plus deaths. But then on the other hand, then he writes a paper that says that the CDC, or that, excuse me, that the death rate is the same as the flu relatively. It's like you have, or the, a bad flu. It's like you have these double facing. It's all double speak. Like they'll say stuff, and it's like, okay, that's actually not true, but it's definitely not accurate, and it is going to leave a lot of people who don't know the context behind what you're saying completely in the dark, and or giving them the complete wrong impression about what's reality. Like it's just this very fascinating upside down world. You can't trust the mainstream media for shit. CNN is caught constantly staging stuff and making shit up, and then they still yet somehow are mainstream media and people watch them and believe what they have to say. It's just like we have so much that we are swallowed up in, that we just can't even see forest through for trees, because we're in the thick of it, to the degree that we've got to be able to, when we hear something that makes us terrified and scared and feel icky inside, that's when you got to lean into that feeling. Because when you listen to the mainstream media and you kind of don't really feel anything, you're desensitized to all the violence and the gruesome, the fires now are kind of like, oh, I guess the world's on fire, I'm just going to go about my day. It's like that level of desensitization compared to the icky feeling you feel when you hear truth is an indication that there is something messed up about your understanding of what your life is like. And that is the uncomfortable thing that we have to do now as a collective people, if we're going to get a critical mass of people awake enough to like not allow this end game to be put on us. Is that if people are too afraid to open up and to recognize that that is what's happening, that we are being oppressed, that we are collectively being manipulated to think that we are either racist or not. Like, it's not, am I racist or not? That's a stupid ass thing to say. And Black Lives Matter, honestly, I'm really upset that we've been manipulated to have this thing about like, oh, I can't say anything about what I think, and I feel bad for admitting that I'm not really sure what to say about my white privilege, and I'm so sorry for my white privilege. I've had people say that to me, and I'm like, miss me with that. I'm not even trying to have that be my life, because it skips way over the point, which is that unity is not happening. Justice for all is not happening. Liberty for all is not happening. There are millions and millions of people who don't have clean water. And that has nothing to do with race, with political, anything. It's all about economic insecurity. And guess who runs the economy? It's the people who control all of that. So obviously, you don't know that there were way more people who don't have access to clean drinking water than even got coronavirus. But we don't have a global shutdown about that. I mean, it's atrocious.
It's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
And this new world order is on the way. And with each event unfolding, we are getting closer and closer, which is terrifying, because we don't know what's going to happen. My fear is, the military is going to come in, and I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah. Let's have that conversation. Yeah. What are you afraid of, military coming in?
Well, if you guys saw the video that I posted on our page, them marching down the neighborhood streets and shooting at their doors and whatnot, something like that, I fear, just patrolling of the streets and restriction to, they weren't allowed to say anything. Like, I'm on my porch. No, you're not allowed to say anything. Get in your fucking house and shoot at you. So I'm scared for that. I'm also scared for what is to come as far as our journey and what we will have to do to take our stand. Because each time that we, go out there, it's taking a risk, and you don't know what's going to happen. And with the world on fire, and, first, when we started lockdown, that first couple of days, I was like, I feel World War III coming, and this is it, guys. It's unreal that we could possibly be put in these situations where we've read in our history books, and the older people have experienced possibly, but that is terrifying to me because I love my family, I love my friends, I love my community, and that is the last thing I want. What about you?
Yeah, all of that. And I guess maybe for me the first thing that came to mind though was that these aren't just, it's not like um again with the obfuscation, like it's not just that they're sending the military in, it's that they're putting, and you can read this because they're talking about it if you actually read like the articles and not just the headlines where they're even reporting on this. It's not just the military that's going door to door, that's coming business to business. It's the operatives that are kind of the agents who are in positions within law enforcement, within the military, within the CDC, and these other agencies, the World Health Organization, that disseminate certain pieces of information that are meant to influence what we do, what we believe, how we act, what we think, how we interact with each other, and how our society works, how it runs. And I think that for me, what's scary about that is, for example, I saw here in Utah, there was a tattoo shop that was approached, um, a tattoo or piercing shop that was approached by a DHS agent, um, Homeland Security. And they came in and they said, "We've got these images that we want you to help us identify this person because, we want to see if you can help us figure out who this person is." And they're basically showing the artist a picture of some artist's work, and asking that artist to identify who was tattooed or whatever. Like, I just feel like these things are things that are warped as human to human. Why would this be our dynamic? Within American soil, you've got a person who's coming through to basically, and it was a person who had been photographed at a riot here in Utah. And I think that it's like, okay, if you don't have within the police force the ability to track that person down, do you really have the right to manipulate the citizens against each other in order to get that information? On a scale this large, I don't know that I agree with that.
It's just like going back to that snitch line
Yeah.
for the coronavirus.
Yeah. And it's like, these are things that okay, it would be one thing if these people were being identified because they had reasonable cause to believe that this person had committed a crime. And I'm sure that that's what they're going to, predicate these visits on. And I can't imagine that that's not what they're predicating them on. And I can't imagine that there's not going to be truth to that. Like, they're going to say, okay, this person was photographed torching a police car, so we're looking for that person. Okay, so there's one element of this makes sense to me. But where I think the leap is we're taking that and then we're applying it to these contact tracing strategies. We're applying it to the strategies that these government agencies use to surveil other country spies and militia, and like the whole 9/11 craziness that went down that put a bunch of surveillance policies in place are directly now being used to investigate domestic terrorism, because that's what they use 9/11 for, is to open up the book and say, okay, great, now we're not going to just do terrorism in other countries, we're also going to be able to like manipulate our way around policies and laws so that we don't have to abide by the Constitution in order to get at certain pieces of information or whatever, or do certain things. And I totally lost my train of thought.
Oh, that was perfect.
Was it?
Yes. Yes.
Mm.
Good points.
I think oh, I was talking about just what I'm afraid of. Yeah, these other operatives coming through and basically like manipulating our society, getting business owners to follow along with stuff because they're they're complying with things that, a DHS agent is going to flash his badge, and what are you going to say to him? But at the same time, we don't know to look at that DHS agent and recognize that they may not necessarily be one of the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the reality of the world we live in now, and that's just something that we have to like be able to sit with and understand that it's just true. And so there are things that we can do about it. But as we see right now, where there are now calls for mayors and governors, I guess, to manipulate budgets in order to force the the call out of the military. They're trying to enact this like heavy-handedness on governors, and the people in each state elect their own governor, and the people in each state don't necessarily elect the president. Like a state may vote for the other guy, collectively speaking, under that one state. And so to that state, the governor, I think, should be the person to whom that state would listen, as far as like they're the person that they voted for, the person that leads that state. It's the governor. And I believe, as far as I can understand, and I haven't looked into this, but as far as I can understand, the governor of the state has legal precedent over that state and what they can do there. And so Trump being like, oh, now we got to call on these mayors to resign because they're not calling out the military or letting their police force deal with the situation. And it's like, okay,
which is what they did yesterday, or was that today?
I think that was today.
To who? New York.
Yeah, Mayor De Blasio, and saying that Cuomo, the governor of the state, should remove his mayor of New York City for not doing this. And it's like, okay, so take away the backdrop though of what he's saying and understand what he's saying underneath it is that he is demonstrating the same thing that he said about coronavirus. The governor will lock down, or I'm going to say so. And there were a lot of people who were like, well, he can't really do anything about it. They're saying the exact same thing now. He's saying, well, you better call out the National Guard or I'm going to make you. And there are a lot of people who are like, well, I don't think you can do that. And so the question then becomes, why is he pushing that so hard? Now he's angling to be like, okay, cool. Well, now we're going to talk about how now the rioters are, domestic terrorists, and we have to label them as such. And so we have to like do this thing because terrorism. And if you don't recognize the exact same playbook being trotted out for this as was trotted out in, 2001 and the years that followed, and the fact that it's been continued, like all of that stuff, all that legislation has been continued to be reinforced over the years since that happened, because they wanted those policies in place long before 2001 ever 9/11 ever happened. And same thing with coronavirus. The CARES Act that went into place, that people are like, oh, great, we've got government subsidies and we've got protection from the government. We've got support and they're going to keep us afloat and everything. That bill was written way before coronavirus ever was a thing. Like nobody knew anything.
Right?
I think a year and a half or something like that. It was, it was July or January of 2019, I think.
That was like edited, re-edited. Maybe never mind.
Yeah. So, and like it was written, and then they rewrote it for the title, and they added a couple things in so that it specified about coronavirus. But like all of the main components of the things that they passed were clearly demonstrably things that they wanted to pass in the first place. And whether or not they orchestrated coronavirus so that they could pass these things, or they orchestrated the lockdowns or the panic or the overinflation of the numbers or the testing or whatever, or if they just happened to see it happening and took advantage of that, I don't know. But it's still a fact that that bill was not introduced to deal with coronavirus. And one has to wonder, okay, why? So again, with all these policies that are kind of on the back shelf that they're pulling down now, these policies have been written in place because they want them in place. And they're using these events, whether, again, whatever you believe about the events themselves, about their origination or their intentions or their motives and everything, that to me is kind of beside the point. We could have that conversation because I think they're very interesting conversations, but beside the point, when you look at what's actually happening, we are literally being taken over by our own government. It's a coup. It's a classic coup. They're doing sanctions on the governors now to tell them, okay, this state is not going to get any funding if in certain areas, if they do not comply with our National Guard directive. And then that's going to comply with another, directive down the line. And then they're going to comply with something else because they're going to be hooked on that funding. And I have to admit, I would be really curious to see the list of states that like took federal funding for coronavirus and the order in which the states are taking the National Guard directive. Like, I'm very curious about that, because ultimately I don't think it's just about the protests. Otherwise, why would he be saying all of the states should do this when it's not? I don't think it's just over half the states have protests right now.
What?
I don't think it's all 50 states, but he's saying all of them should. And I'm like, why?
Why?
And maybe
why?
Yeah.
See,
maybe
that's where we. Sorry, that's where we get to like. Does it make sense? Eh? No.
Does it?
It doesn't.
I don't know. I don't know that it can. Well, so with this coup that's happening right now, and if the Rockefeller doc serves as a playbook, the Rockefeller doc that we were talking about earlier, that goes into these scenarios that they've played out. Which let me read actually the other two, because I don't know. I just am of the opinion at this point that maybe what we're seeing initially, I thought, oh, interesting. They like scenarioed out all these four scenarios, and now we're seeing lockstep. Well, there have been so many drills, not just about coronavirus, but about a number of things. And these four scenarios, the second one seems to be also very similar to what's happening. And so is Smart Scramble. So again, we see this document specifically suggesting certain types of things are going to happen and recommending different things to consider when implementing certain policies and procedures and everything. And you look at this document, if you imagine yourself as somebody who's like I don't know, a state legislator who's looking at their situation as a state legislator trying to write some information, like you have to understand that these policies are put in place to guide the people who then decide what we get to do with our lives. And so what I think we need to do is make sure that we are not so asleep that we can't stop them from doing that by demonstrating that we are not silent.
Right.
Tell them what Trump said about the silent majority.
Right.
So I saw this hashtag is trending on Twitter, and Trump tweeted it out in all caps, just these two words, silent majority. And I think it's fascinating because Trump, again, he's a genius with the double speak. So if you take that and break it down, let's unpack that for a second. Double speak is where you say something and it's like, it's true, but it's like super not true at the same time somehow. I'm trying to think of a good example. But this is one actually. So Trump is talking about that's not actually not a great example. Okay, so anyway, with this particular thing that he's talking about though, with like he's trying to pull the military out, I totally just lost my train of thought there. And I wanted to talk about that other issue though because it really like came into point with it. But I feel like I feel like I feel like you should explain though the situation behind the military coming through and how with the military on the streets, how that's gonna like turn our psyche all wonky because of what we saw.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're getting into a little into what I like a little more. Because I'm not really into like listening about negativity and politics and riots and shit. So one of the things that we are doing is bringing awareness to our consciousness, and this will tie back to what the military will be doing to us. Okay, and it also ties into our name. Okay, so United Vibration. For those of you that maybe are not as familiar with vibrations or frequencies, these vibrations and frequencies are essentially what connects us all. And we are all connected in that, as far as thinking down to the very cellular, molecular level. You learn in science that molecules, atoms, they have to vibrate. And then those different frequencies create different reactions, and then the combinations create different reactions, etc. They create mass, they create structure and solids and liquids and all the things that think about the atoms have just a small space in between each one. And within that space where they're vibrating so tightly that the electronic frequency that is going through ends up, if you think of it at a large scale, every single piece of us is electronically pulsing and electronically connected, and down to the very small molecular level with these vibrations through air, which also is not necessarily completely it's not completely, what would the word be, like, you think of air as like non-existent. There are particles, there are so many things in the air that right now, not even touching Tiger Lily, I am connected to her through energy. And that energy
ET form.
That energy is vibrates at a certain frequency. Now, a higher frequency is more toward enlightenment, and a lower frequency is more toward, um, let's say,
Servitude.
servitude.
You go ahead with what you were gonna say.
Yeah. So we have those different ends of frequencies, and you can vibrate any level in between and around and up and down and all around. And the fact that my energy and what I create within myself, which essentially is energy, and I'm releasing energy, and that goes out to Tiger, and it affects her, and her energy affects me. So we're all connected in that our energies are all connected. Now, this is the cool part because okay, so there have been studies and psychologically looking at the brain and putting it under a scanner when you're thinking creates an electrical impulse. And that electrical impulse is sent throughout the whole body and we're creating energy and all of these things. So as your thoughts, as far as your thoughts are concerned, they are a thing. They actually exist because of that electrical impulse. And so when you're thinking of your thoughts being something, what are your thoughts? So that's where we get into what do our thoughts consist of? Positive, negative, everything in the middle, back and forth. And where do those frequencies reside of our thoughts? So again, higher frequency, lower frequency, everything in between. And as we're all on this spectrum of frequency, all kind of gliding together, we're all impacting each other through our frequency and through our energy. And when we have some type of, what would you call them? Some type of huge monster come in and take over our homes and scare the shit out of everybody, including your poor cute kids that I'm sure are already freaked out as enough as it is by like what the hell is going on here, where are my friends? And that immediately will create negative energy of stress and possibly trauma for a lot of people, and that trauma will reside in their bodies forever and also radiate that negative energy, sharing that traumatic energy and negative energy with everyone in the surrounding area because we're all connected.
And even if it's not like the military coming into your home, think of how much fear there has been about the virus, about the riots, about the looting, about the blah, about the food storage, about the toilet paper. Like that's a great example of everybody's panicking over stuff. Panic. Everybody's panicking over stuff, and they fearmonger us into these positions where we're exuding that icky energy and taking it in and then taking on other people's baggage about their negative energy, and it's just this nasty mosh of like gross, and everybody comes out of quarantine just needing a really deep hug. We can't even fucking do that anymore.
So essentially what is happening is that we are all lowering our frequencies very slowly but together, which has also been something that has been in the works because your energy, your body cannot create good natural energy on a shitty on food that is genetically modified, all of this shit, fast food on every corner, no exercise, all these things. So our bodies are already weakened and damaged, and our frequency vibes lower because of that. Once if we have a healthy body, we vibe higher. And so with all of our frequencies at a low range, we are more susceptible to anything, really. We're weak. And now we're separated, and we'll go back to that whole thing. So going and wrapping it back into the vibration and part of the movement. So what we're realizing is, and I'm sure you've possibly heard about this through other people or books or something, but there has to be some type of movement to raise the vibration of all of the people simultaneously, which is why we're bringing awareness to this, because if we are stuck in this low frequency and feel like there's nothing we can do, we're just going to say, okay, yeah, take over my life. This is the new normal. Then we're going to be stuck. And the point of what we're doing is to raise that frequency and vibration and connect it, because we are connected through that, through the energy, which then brings us to our collective unconscious, where all of our thoughts are connected. So, have you ever thought of like, oh, that's interesting? I think like I've heard that before. Or you come up with something and you're like, that's really cool. Oh, it already exists. Then you're tapped into the collective unconscious of all of the different thoughts that are floating in the world. All of the thoughts have been thought for the most part, I think. I don't know. I'll check. And
It just says on your wrist.
yes.
2 thoughts left to be.
And so, with all of the thoughts in this collective unconscious, we can and also have the ability to tap into these really cool things that we don't tap into because we have been put blinders over our eyes on purpose to cage us like little animals. So we are capable of so many things, and that's where the evolution comes in.
Yeah. So, like Jazz is talking about on an existential, like, well, I don't know. There's like physiological stuff that she's talking about where your actual physical body does things that can produce electricity that can be measured on a machine. Like these things are physical things, but there's also these emotional things and mental things that also go along with it that she's talking about where if you actively, and you've heard of the power or the law of attraction and the power of attention and all of these different ways of phrasing basically that if you intend energy into your thoughts, into your desires, into what you want, your your life shapes itself around that thought. And it's old. It's not for this like woo woo hippie reason. It's because for the same reason that when you get a new car, when you look at a new car, or when you hear of a new concept that has been existing for a while that's just there, then all of a sudden you see it everywhere. You see that car on the street all the time. Like that is a thing that happens, and it's not that that car is brand new. That car has been made forever, but you bought this car and now you see it everywhere and you never used to notice it before. And this is a phenomenon that's just a natural phenomenon of the brain. And it's just because there's so much stuff out there that until you actually direct attention to it, it's out in the periphery, it's out in this like subconscious world. And until you bring it into your consciousness, then it doesn't manifest. And so to your like reality, to your actual like visibility. And so when you translate that to the idea that we're all suppressed and we're all living in this like crazy fucked up clown world, if we which we are, right? If we
clown world.
Yeah, if we don't want to live there anymore, if we want to take the curtain down and be like, hey, Wizard of Oz, bro, you got to go, we on the next train to Evolution Town. I think that the next like version of what we're doing right now as a society, where we've got this artificial technology and this artificial food and this artificial everything, is getting to a place where we as a species can actually access all of our senses that extend way beyond the five that we're taught to think about and use every day. The senses that we have that we know exist on a certain level because we can see them manifest. Like, when you've had deja vu and it's so real that there's something to it. When you've had this like crazy synergistic thing happen and you just have to chalk it up to, I don't know.
Yeah.
When you've had this ridiculous like in tune moment with someone where you either knew exactly what they were doing and what they were wearing in the moment and the like stance that they had and everything, and there was no other way that you possibly could have known that. Like, there are these things that we experience, excuse me, and they're far between, but they're common enough that they're in our immediate consciousness. Like, we know of them, we've heard these stories from other people if we haven't experienced them ourselves. And when that's the case, we have to listen to that. We have to listen to the fact that there are things about our body, about our being, about life that we are not being told. And I'm saying that for a specific reason because it's not just that nobody knows these things, it's that we are not being told these things. They are known to people on this planet who are
Mhm.
withholding that information from us so that we can't evolve, so that we have to rely on their artificial technology, their artificial food, because we don't know how to heal the earth,
Mhm.
because we don't know how to tune our body into understanding what our body needs with minerals and different vitamins and stuff based on our own genetics and all that kind of stuff. We're not taught the fact that our parents and their parents and their parents before them all had trauma that we are dealing with in our physical body, and that's why our shoulder gets jacked up and that's why we have shit knees. No, people just think, oh, it's just genetics. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but like there's a reason for it.
Yeah. Oh, and then what drives me crazy too is when we get into chakra development, because we're in the womb, and that's when your chakras start to develop, and all the things that happen to you as a child help develop and shape. I mean, obviously, we know that through psychology, that your experiences as a child, if they're traumatic, they help shape who you become and how you react to things and how you cope with things. And it's the same thing when you're a fetus, and whatever trauma your mother had suffered, or the birth, or as a small child, anything that you go through is going to be permanently embedded in your being. And those types of things, if we could just expose the nature and the beauty of those types of things and look at it as a positive thing, let's actually develop these baby humans into incredible masterpieces, because we can flourish them. We can help them become incredible things by getting in tune with their senses and coming up with ways to, save the planet, things like that. And
Exactly.
we are just, not only are we like, not, we don't know, like, we don't know the things that we can do. Some people are discovering that, and like, practitioners of different sorts are discovering those things, but we don't know the extent for sure. I mean, what is the percentage of our brain that we even use?
Like 10, I think, like on a
Something
general basis.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, really?
Yeah, and like that,
Just chilling in there,
we all just
doing
know
nothing.
that, and we don't like,
Look into it.
why is there no global shutdown
Yeah.
over that?
Instead, we just go and do stupid shit, like go to different planets and jump around. It's like, let's look in our brains and see how we can develop as beings to enlightenment and
Right.
beauty.
But no, there's a war I gotta fight in Afghanistan because poppy fields and oil.
Well, it's like, must we be so stupid and fucking stubborn that we can't even just say, this will actually be better? Let's do this instead.
Yeah. Which actually, that's one of the scenarios in that Rockefeller document is that everybody gets together. It's called Clever Together is the other one. And everybody kind of gets together because the economy is so bad off after this like financial crisis in 2008 that the economy never bounces back and it just like is in a tailspin. And there are all these things that are happening, and they basically have to come all together with different organizations and individuals across the world and like figure stuff out on how to like solve the economic crisis and how to solve the climate change issue. And they're like noticing all of these things, and what the document basically surmises about this, like this scenario, the end of the scenario, it basically says that um there never really was a point at which they could possibly get back to a like situation of stability and of prosperity, because even though they all worked together and they all like got together to solve problems together and try to do like the humanitarian thing, the
Mhm.
economy was just so bad off that they couldn't save it, and so they just lived in impoverished states. And I'm just like,
No.
the economy is a made up construction it's implemented upon us. Like, what is
Ah!
it about the economy that ties us to be able to like sustainably
Um,
grow food and shit? Like, no,
Seriously.
no.
It's just like money, guys. Think about, okay, how much in debt the United States is. Do you know off the top of your head?
No, I'm not.
It's a lot. And
It's
now
a lot.
and now more. And so But we're just going to go and just add a couple numbers to this bank account real quick because I just have to pay some bills. And then, but it doesn't matter where it's at because it's not real. It's just numbers on a computer.
Yeah. I don't think people. I think it's interesting because even though we probably like understand that to a degree, it's so mind-boggling when you get into how fake our money system
Right.
is and
Mm-hmm.
how manipulated it is and how at like what was that? What was that guy? I don't know if it wasn't Fauci. It was the guy who I'm not going to remember who he is, but the guy who is of Moderna, the company that is doing the vaccine, one of the main companies, it's like the forerunner for the coronavirus vaccine, for the
Mm-hmm.
COVID-19 vaccine. Um, he comes out and he says something about, oh, we like did a test and it came out like this. And that's like basically what he said. He didn't really even like go into a whole lot of detail about the test, but then when you look into it, it's like they did a test and some of the people got what looked like antibodies, but then they also got like way sicker or something like that. Like they developed like
Yeah.
additional symptoms or something. There was something like very like, but they were like, oh, we have progress though on the vaccine front, and because it's progress, then the stock market exploded for Moderna. Like they like went way up, and he sells off a bunch of stock, and then the next day comes out that that article like is kind of being disseminated and unpacked, and the stock completely plummets again. And it's like you see this kind of stuff over and over. And if you put two and two together and look in all the different places, you're reading the economic news and you're reading the like social news and you're reading the domestic and the international, you're going to be able to piece all these components of the
Weird
puzzle
little
together.
things happening all at once.
Yeah, that just unfold and you can see clearly like, oh, this is definitely not coincidence
Yeah.
when every country after country is implementing these same exact unprecedented and seemingly uncoordinated measures.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
And now state after state with these riots, which is just indicative that we're going down the exact same road, and that's exactly where they want us. But like Jazz said, there's this incredible opportunity that we have as a society, as a people, to turn our focus instead of relying on the government to tell us what's what, even though we know that they're not. Like, let's not do that to ourselves anymore. Let's instead tune into the collective unconsciousness that we all basically inherently know exists. You call it God, you call it collective unconscious, you call it just intuition, you call it I am a psychic, you call it anything. Yeah, like
Just kidding, not
there's
voodoo.
so many different flavors to what this is, but that's what we are as beings and everybody knows it. And it's time to stand up and instead of questioning it and thinking, "Oh, it's just this blind faith thing." No, it's real. It's an actual thing. You possess the ability to go into the collective unconscious and pull any information you want out. Look up information on the Akashic records. Like there's so much out there that we do have. And so maybe in closing, we can say that there are a number of things that we can do as a people that will actively and demonstrably demonstrate that we are the majority, but we are not fucking silent.
Hell no.
Hell no. Talk about what we can do.
So one of the things, well, do you want to do that?
Yeah. Okay. So the first one would be educating yourself. Educate yourself. We have just been kind of like stumbling along trying to like see what we see and find what we find, and we've found that it's a lot and it's overwhelming. But again, what we talked about earlier, when you lean into that uncomfortable feeling that puts you in a position where it's like really hard to parse what's real and what's not and what's happening and what's fake, and then later new information comes out, that's uncomfortable. But I think what's interesting about the fact that there is so much turbulence right now is that we're already shooken apart from those constructs that they've given us that make it really hard for us to see what's real. It's actually the case that right now your intuition is going to work so much better on trying to discern what's really happening and what's real, who's lying to you, what's really not quite exactly the truth. It's going to be so much easier for you because one, so many more people are awake to it, and two, this is a big disruption. We're very far outside of our collective norm. The entire world shut down for a period of several weeks, and then several parts of the world are still shut down much longer than that. And so this disruption makes it so that our psyche can recognize all of that stuff that's in the collect or the unconscious, the collective unconscious, because there's going to be more ability to access that, versus when we're in our rut, it's kind of like the dust is settled over us and we're just kind of sleeping in this like vague haze, and it's not like we really can parse all the stuff that's happening in the periphery. But now it's like people are fucking woke, man. And
Mm-hmm.
people want something different, and that's
Mm-hmm.
something that you can definitely do now is get on DuckDuckGo. Don't use Google anymore. Get on DuckDuckGo and look stuff up. Look up the headlines that you're seeing told to you in the news on the mainstream media. Look up those headlines and then read about it. Like look it up and like click on some of the links and see where it takes you and ask yourself questions. Like that's the biggest thing, is like to educate yourself, you have to be willing to again go outside that comfort zone and ask questions that you've been told not to ask. Ask the things that you kind of like feel are weird to ask and uncomfortable, and you don't want to admit to anybody that you're curious about those things. Those are the things to look up in your spare time and figure them out, because the more you do that, the more you will start to see these little dots connecting from all over the place. Because that's how this works, is it's like they'll give you a little bit here, and then something happens and they tell you a little bit there, and then now this other thing happens and they give you a little bit there, and then somebody else says something to you and it means this, and then all of those things together though leads to this overall picture that you can start to grasp if you want to. So that education part is important because it'll start to kind of seed your ability to think about things differently versus how they're trying to make you think about them.
I definitely agree with that. I think that for me personally, because like I mentioned before, haven't been fully involved or awake or up to speed with a lot of the things that have been going on as far as current events, and it's just important to listen, take time to listen to something every day if you can, and it will add up as far as knowing what's going on and also asking questions about what's going on, which is another reason why we want to do this, is to start those conversations. And I know, I get it. Some of the questions are like, I feel stupid. Why am I asking this? And like, what does this even mean? And I actually don't know what's going on. And that's totally fine. And that's exactly why we wanted to create this safe space of positivity and pushing forward as that movement, so that we can, oh, what was the description again? Because one second, I'm just going to read this. Okay, and the reason for that is because we are creating a peaceful movement by bringing awareness and education to the community through positive change, and like we just said, part of that is education, and also education of your friends and family. And that is not to say like what we say is correct. That is to say, listen, look it up, find out, read, think about it, and then decide for yourself. And maybe you don't agree with some of the things we say or one of the things, and that's okay, because maybe we don't agree with you. But we're not always going to agree on everything, and that's okay. I have friends that believe in all types of things, and I don't care. They're still my friends. But we need to educate our family and friends, because they will be impacted by this, as will you. And creating preparedness and awareness to know that something's coming potentially. Hey, it might not be tomorrow, it might not be next week, might not even be this year, who knows? But we are going to see stuff develop as we go. And wouldn't you like to know what's going on and help your family and do those preparedness things that you thought maybe you would put off this year? So think about that. And
Oh, so I mentioned DuckDuckGo earlier, which is an alternative to Google as a search engine. And there are many others, and I don't necessarily think DuckDuckGo is the best one, but I just know that Google is so manipulated. And the same thing is true with the mainstream media. At this point, it is very obvious. It's demonstrable. You can look it up. You can talk to people you know in your body. You already know that the mainstream media tells you what they are going to tell you, and that's not always exactly what's happening, and we can see that. And so for that reason alone, we should turn to other forms of media.
who would you say, like, to someone watching, who is the mainstream media?
Oh, mainstream media would include Fox, which is hilarious because Trump was like, fake news, but Fox is good. And then people started watching Fox. And if you look at the time frame where Trump was all about Fox News, it's all of his ideals are coming out, and the people are phrasing things in such a way that kind of like helps give
Mm-hmm.
Trump a little bit of a cushion in terms of some of the things that are said that are scandalous about him. And they ask all the right questions that make sure that Trump doesn't look bad, and they never ask questions that make him look kind of questionable. But there are a lot of questions that could be asked that make him look questionable. So you know that Fox News is kind of a one-sided situation, and that's fine if you understand that, and if you understand that they're not an unbiased organization of journalists who look up the truth and find it. And I'm not saying anything bad about any one individual at Fox News. It's just that the organization as a whole, and the way that they edit their content, and the way that the people who choose what content gets put out, this is a mainstream media organization, an organization that reports on news that the people should know, but they don't give us everything. And so it's a manipulated situation. I'm going to tell you what you're going to know, and you're just going to shut up and take it, and that's fine. And anything else is conspiracy theory and doesn't make sense, or is kind of considered, a little bit extremist. You better watch what you say in case you get shown up as a terrorist later, because that's not good to say in terms of the public. So it's kind of like the culture enforcer. So Fox News, CBS, um, the ones that have like all the main channels, CNN, ABC, and like your local outlets have like a chapter of these mainstream media outlets, and they're owned by, it's like it's like six companies own the mainstream media outlets. It's this tiny faction of people who all probably get together and decide what the narrative is going to be, and they're very political and careful about what they tell you and what they don't, and what they let you know a little bit about, just so that they can pull it out later and explain it to you. It's just like, yeah, I went on a way tangent about that.
So, the choose alternative media, which would be,
So I personally have found some people like The Last American Vagabond. You can look him up actually on YouTube, but you can also look them up by their website. And The Conscious Resistance, they also have a website. Who else? We listen to Jason Burmis and We Are Change.
yeah, so there's a couple of different media resources. How could someone search for something like that besides like the names you listed?
Yeah, so go to, I mean, that's the thing though, is that I don't know, because it's not like you can just like collectively go to one platform. YouTube is where I go, because I can use the YouTube app and turn my phone off and listen to a video in the background. You can find BitChute is a great place to go, because basically if you go to BitChute and like search for something like, I don't know, I don't know if I should say the thing that I'm thinking. If you go to BitChute and search for something like Antifa, you're going to find a lot more contextual information, versus if you go to YouTube and search for that, you're going to find some stuff that's sanitized for your eyes by the powers that be. And so, as far as like where to go, like I said earlier, it's just, I think personally, I've found it easiest to come at this from a place of, I'm curious, I want to know something, and I'm gonna look it up until I kind of understand it a little bit. And then those like something happens in regards to somebody tells Trump that he's an idiot because he doesn't know about the Constitution. Okay, so pull up the Constitution and read it, and then see what he just said that somebody was responding to, and see what you understand about what that person said. And as you see Trump respond to something, and Nancy Pelosi say something, and Chuck Schumer say something, these are people in the government. And as you look up the laws or whatever that they're referencing, it gives you a lot of context into how they will phrase things for your ears. So you can actually see, oh, well, it actually means this, contextually speaking, but what they're saying is this. So I know that their agenda must be to get me to believe this. Now, why? And as you start to like ask those thought experiments, and like Jazz said, get your friends and family involved, you can start to come up with additional questions to look up. And then you find people who have talked about it, because when you look that up on DuckDuckGo, it's going to be an article on the Conscious Resistance website, for example. Like, that's how I found most of the people that I listen to, is by looking for people who have taken the time to write an article, and I can look at them, and they've been like able to like list all of their sources or documents and whatever. And these are things that the mainstream media doesn't do. They don't give us that kind of transparency. And so it's hard to take them over somebody who's actually done some work and looked up what the laws say and stuff like that. I'm going to take that person over this guy who's like, oh, an anonymous source says that there's going to be an attack by a terrorist today.
You know what that reminded me of?
Mhm.
Um, healthy food versus genetically modified food.
Yeah, how so?
Yeah, because they're going to give you this. It's all pumped up with whatever the hell I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's easy. It's right here. It's right here.
Yep.
And then it's hard to find that clean, organic source of food or
Mm-hmm.
media
Uh-huh.
because that's what they want. They
Right.
want it to be difficult.
Yeah.
They want it to be a challenge. And then when individuals like, who was it that got banned?
They all did.
Yeah.
Let's see. David Icke got banned.
Okay.
David Icke got banned.
Yeah, so individuals that are sharing the message and sharing proper news and updating people on what's actually happening get banned from YouTube.
Why? Because we don't get to know certain things because national security, like the government gets to decide what you get to know about your world, the home that you live on,
Huh.
the planet. You don't get to know certain things. You live here, that person lives here. What is the difference between you and that person who gets to know that information?
Yeah.
I mean, there are some things I can see how you can make an argument for some things like that. But on the whole, the fact that we can teleport, the fact that I could read your mind if I wanted to.
Yeah.
They don't want me to have that kind of spycraft because it's bad for them.
Yeah. Then they don't have control.
They don't have control.
So let's kind of finish up here. We have a couple hashtags that we've been using recently, and we'll likely come up with a couple more to add to it. One of them is we choose to evolve, and that's going back to this conscious movement where we are elevating our frequency and coming together to make a huge change in a positive way by stepping into intention or stepping into the day with intention on what you want the world to be. What would you want the world to look like? And that's honestly like reaching for the stars too. What would it look like? It to me, it would not look like this exactly. It could be happy, but there's a lot of things that I would really personally like, and so that's what I would picture for myself in a positive, peaceful light with peaceful intention. And then another hashtag that we have is this is our home, and this is our home is actually referring mostly to being completely controlled and overrun by whatever or whoever that is coming to do that. So this is our home, and we don't want to back down. We live here. Our families are here. Our friends are here. Our lives are here, and we are going to protect our home. And then the last one.
The last one is. Do we write it down? Oh, you said so. You already said we. This is our home. We choose to evolve, and then we decide. So the we decide is really about like there's kind of this general sense that we are just going along and we're milling along and we're just kind of like floating upstream with the rest of the current. And I think that we should take the opportunity right now that we have to say no, we get to decide what we want our lives to look like and what we want our lives to be like. And ultimately right now, like Jazz was saying, this is our home and we should get to decide how our home is laid out and what we what we experience in our home, and we should be able to feel like we can go places in our world without being potentially overrun by terrorists or fire or COVID or whatever. Like we've been made to feel very afraid, and we should get to decide how we come back from these major catastrophic events. We get to decide what we do in order to rebuild our society and in order to keep each other safe in the midst of something. And I think that that's for me the most powerful thing that we could do is to decide.
Yeah, I agree. So what we are asking everybody is to share our page, and hopefully, if you're still here, maybe it took you a couple tries to watch the whole thing, and that's okay. Share and participate by doing the silent protest or the silent demonstrations with us, even if it's just online, using the hashtags. We encourage that, and we want to create a big movement. We have some ideas and plans coming up ahead, and we want to have as many people participate as possible. As we're getting to the point of no return. So I urge you to join us.
I guess I don't really have anything much else to add. Like Jess said, there's a lot that we can do in order to kind of pull ourselves together. This is our opportunity to do that. And wake up in the morning, think about what you would idealize as your perfect visual world. And that's fine. Like, go balls to the wall with that. And the more positive energy and intention and thought you can put into that, that attention will spread to other people, whether they are aware of it or not. And that's the goal, is that we just have so much out there that everybody feels it, and it starts to turn the tide of what we're feeling right now, which is a lot of negativity and confusion and fear of each other. And then at 9 p.m. Mountain Time every night, we're doing our vigil where we'll come together and have more of a together intention, vision, vigil.
Love it. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This is United.Vibration, and wake the unicorns. Over and out.
Over and out. I don't think
No, I wanted to make it awkward.
it's neat. More.
Uh-oh. More awkward.